Hi, everybody. It's 12 o'clock noon. You are at the Whole Brain Fitness program featuring Beverly Sanborn. We're going to just get started in a couple of minutes here. Sometimes it takes people a couple of minutes to log on. We wouldn't want you to miss any part of the program. So give us just a second and we'll get started. Hi, everyone. Thank you for being so patient. It's a couple minutes past the hour, and we're going to get started with our Whole Brain Fitness program with Beverly Sanborn. We're just giving everyone a chance to log on, but out of respect for everyone's time, I think we'll go ahead and get started. My name is Jackie Waldberger with Belmont Village Senior Living. We are so excited to bring you our special program today on whole brain fitness. You really have a very special program in store for you. Before we get started, a couple of orders of business. We'd like you to use the Q&A feature for any questions that can be answered at the end of Beverly's program. We will get to as many questions as possible. While there is the chat feature, we really do appreciate it if you would use the Q&A feature so that it can be very organized to get to as many questions as possible. Additionally, after Beverly's program, we have Susan Berger, our family advisor, on standby to answer any questions that you have regarding Belmont Village. She will also do a brief presentation on our programs at Belmont Village. So stay tuned after Beverly's presentation for Susan Berger. I'm over the moon today to introduce our special guest, Beverly Sanborn. Beverly is an internationally recognized gerontologist and memory care expert, and she is the Vice President of Program Development for Belmont Village. She has helped establish our mind-body awareness programs, and as well as our award-winning programs for memory care. Once defined as a psychiatric condition, she has helped establish breakthroughs in communication, engagement, purpose, and lifestyle for millions of people across the country affected by memory loss. A UCLA, UC Berkeley graduate, she is the epitome of intellect, practicality, and good humor. We are all in for an eye-opening experience today as she is here to discuss with us how to keep our brains healthy as we age. It is my absolute pleasure to introduce Beverly Sanborn. Beverly.
Hi. Well, thank you, Jackie. That was a very generous introduction. Very generous.
All true.
Well, I'm so happy that you're all here to talk about maintaining whole brain fitness, because that's one of my great interests in life. And I'm kind of at the life stage where I need to keep maintaining my whole brain fitness. So everything I'm going to present to you is something that I'm working on, and I've got the whole family working on it, even the cat. We have a new cat in our lives, and I'm even trying to get that cat stimulated. I think he's gone in for the sin of sloth. He just sleeps all the time. In any event, whole brain fitness is one of the most sought after topics today in the world of brain health, because research has shown that with stimulating your brain in very specific ways, you can maintain your brain longer. And it looks like for many people, not all, but for many, probably the majority, you can delay symptoms of dementia. It's not a cure, but it's a way of delaying, and it's also a way of enhancing the whole quality of your life. So I'm going to begin with giving you some ways to look at the brain, things that you can do for your brain, and then I'll talk a little bit about what Belmont does with our whole brain fitness program. Now we're not, it's not moving. Hold on one second here. What is happening here? See, there we go. Okay. The first thing that you need to realize, which you probably do because there's enough literature out on it today, is that when we're talking about whole brain fitness, we're really looking at all of the brain, this whole area here, what they call the cerebral cortex. This area here, and there's some other areas that are very important as well. This area here, the limbic system, is also very involved in the part of the brain that we have to exercise and we have to keep continually stimulated. Now, the brain itself weighs 3 pounds. It's not huge. It's really not terribly large, a part of our body. It has 3 parts. It has the cerebrum, that's this part right here. It has the cerebellum, that's this part here. This is the part that when it's damaged will cause cerebral palsy. And then it has the brain stem, this part right here. And the brain stem is a very critical part. It's something you don't know. You don't realize anything's happening with your brain stem, but this is what really keeps you alive. So that's an important part of the brain. Now the brain has billions of cells, which use about 20% of all the oxygen and fuel, which fuel actually is sugar from a neuron point of view, in your bloodstream. That's really a very large percentage, given how small the brain is relative to the rest of your body. It's a big user of oxygen because the brain is just controlling everything that you, not just what you think, but every bodily function that you have. If you're thinking very hard, your brain might use 50% of all the oxygen in your bloodstream. That's why if you concentrate very, very hard on a topic, for example, and you really commit it to a lot of thought, and you've done that for several hours during the day, you'll feel tired. And you think, how could I be tired? I was just sitting in front of my computer and I was studying. That's because the brain is using so much oxygen. There's so much energy that happens just by thinking. And then the wrinkled surface, this part of the brain, all the little wrinkles, you want those wrinkles, they're very important. And that is the part of the cortex that handles thinking, sensing, movement, memory, a recall, encoding, all of these things. This area is very important. Now, the problem is when you get a dementing illness, any kind of dementing illness, it's this part of the brain that's affected, as well as this part here, the hippocampus. And this is very unfortunate because unfortunately, this is the part of the brain that helps us function as a human being. It's really not a good thing to lose cells in there. Now, just a quick overview so you get a sense of neurons. The cells in the brain are called neurons, and neurons have several different parts, and these neurons have these little branchy guys. These are called dendrites, and they collect electrical signals from other neurons. Neurons send signals to each other. The signals go into the cell body, and then they pass along the axon and into these little synaptic pieces here that connect to these dendrites of other cells. Okay, so this is what the cell is. And what happens in a dementing illness is that this cell gets compromised and finally dies. Cells die. Now, the synapses, and you've probably heard of synapses, cells don't touch each other. There's a space between where one cell and another cell connect. This is a little space here. You can see it here. And the cells have what we call neurotransmitting molecules. And these molecules receive, you see, they are going to receive messages, and then the message is sent through these neurotransmitters into receptors, the little receptor area you see over here of the other cell. And the reason this is important is that when you have an Alzheimer type of dementia, this area gets compromised. So many of the drugs that you take that exist now are designed to keep these little cells. When these cells give their message, they go back. They don't just stay in this side, they go back to this side. So many of the drugs keep these little messengers in the synapse longer so that they can give their message more than once. It's really kind of a mechanical way of transmitting a message. And the solution to it are drugs that are rather mechanical. They don't work forever. And as you can imagine, the cell has to still be alive for that to have any impact. Now, this is a diagram that shows how cells are connected in the brain. This is called the neuronal forest. And this forest is important to understand, because this understanding about this neuronal forest has a lot to do with whole brain fitness. You need to kind of grasp the concept of cognitive reserve, and you can't grasp it if you don't understand the neuronal forest. In the forest, you see how each neuron is connected to just zillions of others. You see just this network of connections. That's how the brain will communicate from one neuron to the other. It's not just one neuron. There's a whole connection of them that is required. All right, and I'm going to get into what is whole brain or cognitive reserve in just a second here. Now, the neurons. This is a graphic of a normal neuron. The healthy little guy sitting here with his dendrites and his own nucleus and his axon. But this is an example of a neuron that's been assaulted by plaques, amyloid plaques. These are the beta amyloid plaques and the tangles. The plaques may trigger the formation of these tangles, and the tangles are relating to the way the neurons can transport nutrients as well as messages, and they become all tangled up. And eventually this cell is on its way to death, this particular one. So this would be a healthy one. This is the other one. And in all dementing processes, the cells die. That's what you're dealing with, is cell death in the brain. Okay, so and this would be as an example, the healthy brain. This gives you an illustration of the size of a healthy brain compared to a severe Alzheimer. You can see how the brain shrinks, and you can see many other formations that have happened in the brain, and you see how it's lost. See here you have all of its surface area, which is coagulated, and here it is rather lost in this area here. This person could still be alive, but well, of course, not for this slide, obviously, that wouldn't be the case, but they would be at a very severe stage. Now, dementia, when we talk about dementia is defined by memory loss, but it has to have at least 2 additional impairments. If it's just memory loss, then it could be just amnesia. You need 2 additional impairments, and they can be either in personality, judgment, and problem solving, managing activities of daily living. And I would, in the experience that I've had over the years, there's always some profound personality change and some very large judgment and problem solving changes, even when some of the activities of daily living work quite well. These 2 areas are the ones where you begin to think, oh gosh, something's really kind of wrong here. There's over 80 different types of dementia that can cause, that are of a dementing type, and Alzheimer's is the most common, but there's 80 different types. There's many other causes of a dementia-like impairment, but they can be curable. So a dementia really is an uncurable condition. So here would be some, I just want to give you some examples of some types that you'll hear of. Here's Alzheimer's, the most common, and then vascular dementia. These are strokes. And often a person will have both Alzheimer's and the vascular, you'll have both of them. It's not uncommon. Then this is a new area that when I first got started was not well known at all. Now is becoming known as a far more common kind of dementia. And you can see the Parkinson's dementias fall in the frontotemporal region and Lewy body. You hear about Lewy body. And many of the researchers think that a group of dementias is probably about as common as this group. There are some other kinds of dementias that are more rare. This one, well, hopefully this one is getting a little more rare. Korsakoff's is caused by alcohol primarily. It can be caused by diseases, but primarily it's caused by alcohol, too much alcohol. And then Creutzfeldt-Jakob, I always put that one in. It's quite rare. It's caused. It's really a prion. It's not related to a protein, and it's kind of related to mad cow disease. Actually, if you ate one of the mad cows, it would be bad. You probably could get Creutzfeldt-Jakob. There's no cure. It's found in areas where they do things like eating monkey brains. In certain cultures, that's aphrodisiac. And so I do want to recommend that you do avoid monkey brains on your diet. It's really quite inadvisable, a bit risky. Now, Alzheimer's, as you get older, as we age, you do experience changes in memory that are considered to be normal. So this little graph here shows you a normal decline. Here would be a quite a normal person. Hopefully they're quite normal there. But as time goes on, they're getting older and older. And here you see they're in their 80s. There is some decline, some slowing down, but that's not dementia. Dementia, the first stage, possible stage of dementia would be what they call a mild cognitive impairment. And that's just some noticeable changes in memory, noticeable changes in recall, but not really, it's not really dementia. However, a large percent of people with MCI get a dementing illness. The cells begin to build up and die. The beta amyloid gets greater and greater in number, and they follow this kind of a trend. Oops, let me go back to that one. They follow this kind of a trajectory. All right, and you can see these are the ages down here. These are birth to 80s, going into the 80s. So this is an important graph in that it shows that, for one thing, the beginning stages of cell death caused by the plaques and tangles in the Alzheimer's type of a dementia begins probably 20 to 25 years before you actually see the symptoms. So if you're thinking of your life between 40 and 60, you need to start a whole brain fitness program right here. You want to start really at middle age. The whole program, you really want to start here, okay? Because that's when you want to begin building cognitive reserve, which you have to keep listening, and I'll get to where cognitive reserve is in just a minute. Now, here are some things to avoid. These are lifestyle things, and they're all, the Heart Association tells us exactly the same: smoking, obesity, physical inactivity, that's sloth, that's my cat, excess alcohol, and lazy brain. This is a new one, lazy brain. You're not stimulating your brain enough. I do kind of worry about excess use of Twitter and tweeting and TikToking and one thing and another, and not getting enough verbal stimulation, because the verbal stimulation is extremely important in maintaining your brain. So I get a little nervous about that. Things to keep under control would be hypertension, a high body mass index, depression. Depression should be treated, particularly if it's clinical, because it is correlated with precipitating dementia. And then high cholesterol and cardiovascular disease. These are all basic to the whole body, your whole healthy lifestyle, but are very important for the brain. Now, the first part of the brain that is noticeable, the first change, occurs in the area of the brain called the hippocampus. The hippocampus, I have a little graphic to show you on the hippocampus. The hippocampus is this part of the brain here. Remember, this is all the cerebral cortex stuff here, the little gray matter that you saw. The hippocampus is sort of embedded in there. And it's all mammals, all animals with backbones have a hippocampus. And a hippocampus is the part of your brain that controls your recent memory. Now, what that means is that anything that you experience, you think about, you hear about, your senses, your intellect, goes into your hippocampus. And then in the hippocampus, it's not stored here. The hippocampus determines if you're going, it sorts it. The hippocampus then sorts it. And then the hippocampus, the sorting and the rest of your brain decides, should I fade it, forget it, or should I save it and send it to another part of the brain to be stored? So it's kind of a conduit. Think of your hippocampus as kind of a conduit. This is the first part, unfortunately, alas, that loses the brain cells in a dementing process. That's why recent memory gets lost. So you see, you could have recent, the problem with recent memory is it goes, the sense or intellect issue goes into your hippocampus. You see, it makes it in, but it sorts and immediately fades, just immediately fades. It can't be saved. It can't be saved in other parts of the brain. That's why people will forget that they had lunch. They can remember where they went to school and their name of their kindergarten teacher, but they can't remember if they had lunch, because that lunch is a new experience. So it went into their hippocampus, it went to the sort function, but then it faded automatically. Okay, it's kind of complex. Unfortunately, the hippocampus is one of the most fragile parts of our brain. For example, just to give you an example, they're finding out that total anesthesia, particularly for older, when you're old, when you're past 65, 70, total anesthesia can cause some permanent damage to the hippocampus. So you really want to use just total anesthesia only when absolutely necessary. And they have other anesthesias now. This is something to be very careful of. The other is that when you travel internationally, if you travel 3 time zones or more, just 3 or more, those time zones will have some temporary damage to your hippocampus. And for some people like pilots or flight attendants, they're beginning to find that there's some permanent damage to the hippocampus. They're starting now to give flight attendants, well, they give pilots time to rest. Flight attendants often fly back to back. You need about 10 days when you go into 3 time zones for your hippocampus to get enough rest and get restored. Now, just a hippocampus test for yourself. You can do that right now. See if you can remember what you had for dinner exactly 1 week ago today. Exactly 1 week ago, Thursday. What did you have for dinner? I can't even remember where I was last Thursday, to tell you the truth, now that I think about it. Okay, but what did you have for dinner? Now, mostly, if you can remember, it's usually because it was an event or a birthday, or you always go out on Thursday night and have tacos or something. But generally speaking, if you can't remember, it's a normal loss of the hippocampus. That memory faded out of your hippocampus because it wasn't stored, and it wasn't stored because it wasn't important to you to remember. So you're only going to remember it if you can. Look at this as this question as an example of another thing you probably can remember. Can you remember where you were when you heard about 9/11? Almost everybody can remember that. And the reason, and even in other cultures, it's been fascinating to me because at Belmont, we work with a lot of cultures, and they weren't in the United States during 9/11. They remember 9/11 too. It was a worldwide event. It was so traumatic and had so much emotion connected to it that it stays embedded in our hippocampus. So that's why we'll remember it. So unfortunately, if you read the positive psychology literature, unfortunately, negative experiences tend to stay more embedded, more easily embedded in our brain, and we'll remember them longer than positive. Isn't that sad? That's quite a sad thing. Now, I wanted to give you 7 warning signs of dementia. The Alzheimer's Association has, if you want to look at their website, they have a very good list of the 10 warning signs. But I kind of like these 7 warning signs. They're sort of compressed, and they came from Massachusetts General. And so we're going to look at what's normal and what's not. I kind of like them presented this way. So what's normal? Forgetting names and appointments, but remembering them later. That's normal. When that happens to you, no, you are not demented. That is not dementia. What's not normal is forgetting recently learned information, important dates or events, birthdays, that type of a thing, and you don't remember it. And in fact, you ask several times. Okay, that's a question. That one, you think, that doesn't sound normal. Okay, here's another one, challenges in planning or solving problems. What's normal is making occasional errors, for example, in balancing your checkbook. Well, I mean, if anybody even does that anymore. But occasional errors of this sort, that's normal. What's not normal is difficulty following a plan, not knowing how to follow directions, looking at a recipe and just thinking, I don't know what to do. I can't figure out what I do next. It doesn't make sense to me. Or having a lot of problems keeping track of your bills. Or what's even more not normal is forgetting if you took the medication, not being able to figure out a way to plan, not being able to figure out a way to solve that problem. Now, here's another what's normal, occasionally needing help with computers. Now, I need more than occasional. I'm going to be admitted. But occasionally needing help with computers and software or recording a TV show, something like that. No, I would need probably total help with that. I probably have a little dementia in this one. That's directions completing familiar tasks, but needing some help. Okay, what's not normal is difficulty completing a task or remembering rules of a favorite game or driving to a familiar location, for example. My sister-in-law has developed dementia, and she lives in one of our Belmonts, and she is in our circle of friends. She was a champion bridge player, absolute champion, and brilliant and very intelligent woman. And what she first noticed was she couldn't remember the bid. She just couldn't remember it. And I mean, that was just unheard of to her. And it was quite devastating to her self-esteem. That's another problem, this devastation to it. Misplacing things and then the inability to retrace your steps, misplacing the cell phone, really, or we know we can call our cell phones, maybe we don't pay as much attention to that as possible. But when you do, you have to retrace your steps. When did I last use it? What was I doing? See, that's what she wasn't able to do that either. She couldn't, she was constantly losing it. What's not normal also is putting things in unusual places. You put your car keys in the refrigerator, for example, or you can't retrace your steps to find them. Odd behaviors like that. That isn't normal. Okay, another example is confusion about time and place. Confused about the day of the week. Wait a minute, what month is it? I can't remember what year it is. What is that kind of thing? That's not normal. But when you travel a lot, my job for Belmont, I do travel a lot, and I'll think, wait a minute, is this Thursday or is this Tuesday? But then I can figure it out. So I think I'm okay here. Okay, but losing track of the dates. And one of the other things was very sad to me, because my sister-in-law is a very, very celebratory person. She was the Christmas for the whole family. She decorates. It's just, it's so gorgeous and beautiful. And birthdays and everything was celebrated with parties. And I was asking her, because I was curious if she was going to have, this is an early stage. And I thought, gosh, is she going to have a party for her son's birthday? And so she said, I can't remember his birthday. She said, I just can't remember. She said, I should be able to. See, that was when I thought, oh dear, that is what's happening. Now, another problem is problems with finding the right word, losing words. That is normal with aging. That normally happens. But when you can't follow the conversation, or you suddenly stop talking in mid-sentence and not knowing how to continue. I remember my uncle, who was a famous storyteller. He lived in Montana, and he was just, he was a Montana storyteller of note. He was so entertaining. And he knew that he was getting dementia, he said, when he would start to tell the story And he said right about in the middle, he couldn't remember. He couldn't remember what the story was. He couldn't remember the story he was telling. See, that was a clue. That was a very unfortunate clue. Now, this one, I think, is probably the greatest change, the change in personality and mood. What's normal becoming irritable when a routine is disrupted. I mean, we have that, or, sitting at the stoplight and for half an hour waiting for the thing to change because you're late and, you didn't organize yourself or something like that. That would be normal. Well, for some people, but it's not normal when you become confused and particularly suspicious or depressed or fearful or anxious when you're out of your comfort zone, when you're confused about what's going on in the routine. And I know with my sister-in-law, my brother said a clue to him, looking back, when he's looking back now, she became very anxious on the freeway, just frightened of the cars and couldn't quite figure out what they were doing. And even as a passenger, she was a passenger, she couldn't drive on it, but as a passenger, she became very anxious and frightened and, let's get off of here and that sort of a thing. Okay, so those are clues that something's coming up. Now, is there any hope? This is always the question. The bad news, there still is not a known cure. There is a new drug that they're trying and it may help more. It's not a cure though. There's no known cure. In the time that they've been studying, really actually about 30 years now, researching dementia, they've been researching cancer and they've made immense strides with cancer, just immense strides. Many cancers are really in total remission and some are really what you'd call cured, but not true with dementia. It has really not gotten very far. But there is good news, and that's whole brain fitness, a whole brain fitness program which stimulates cognitive reserve. It gives you a strong cognitive reserve that is protective and can improve at any age. What we found at Belmont, and I think it's one of the reasons that the Circle of Friends program, which is designed for people who already have a dementia, I think one of the reasons it's so popular is because we found that they build cognitive reserve even though they already have dementia. And my sister-in-law, my brother said he's never seen her look so good. She just looks so healthy and she's happy. I think part of it too is she's happy, she's not depressed, and she's just eager to learn. He said she really hasn't been this way. She's almost like her old self. So what is whole brain fitness? And basically it's probably on your mind, and it is a comprehensive program. It's a complete program that builds cognitive reserve. It's not just brain games, it's a complete and total program. Now let's go back to our little neuron. Remember we looked at this, the neuronal forest. I'll give you an example now of cognitive reserve. If you see these little lit up areas in this graphic, all these little lit up areas mean that these neurons are connected to each other and they're communicating. See the little dark ones? See all these guys in here? They aren't lit up, okay? So they're not connected. They're just hanging in there. Maybe they light up for something else, but they're not connected for this particular set of messages. All right. Now, if a whole bunch, it just say that this little neuron stays alive, but all of these connectors die, when enough of them die, poof, you've got a symptom. You see, a symptom will pop up because your network just died. All right. Cognitive reserve said, all right, given that will happen, what if we stimulate this one, this one, this one, this one? In other words, stimulate a whole bunch of extras, keeping them in reserve. So if these all die, I've got some in reserve to keep going. It's really that simple. That's what cognitive reserve is building neural connections amongst these neurons that weren't connected before for that particular function, like speaking, okay, or thinking or planning. So the point is we want to build these extra neural connections and keep them in reserve. All right, how do you do that? That's been the trick. And this is the thing that research has helped us. See, at Belmont, part of my function at Belmont is to follow the research, and then translate the research into a program. In other words, what would that particular finding look like in a program at Belmont Village? All right, and here's what we found. So we've called out the basic research, and that shows that cognitive reserve will be built if you follow this kind of a regime. Now, what I want you to see here, it's not just mental workout. It's not just this. It's not just lifelong learning, and it's not just mental workout, and it's not just diet. Okay, you have to do all of it. That is the key. That's why we call it whole brain fitness, and that's why it's a comprehensive program. You can't leave anything out. This area here, aerobic and strength training, is critical. And what they found is, well, I've got to tell you, every time I go to the gerontology meetings, they add more time onto the aerobics. But essentially, for the last couple of years, they say you want to work up to about 45 minutes. And that's pretty hefty amount of aerobic exercise. You work up to 45 minutes, and you add to that strength training and balance training. You want to do some stuff in your core, strength and balance. And apparently this strength training helps the metabolism in a way that's very important to the brain. And this is also, of course, important to the heart. The mental workout, of course, is critical, and the lifelong learning. These two kind of go together. And reducing stress. This one is now being seen as very important, reducing stress. That's why mindfulness, you'll hear a lot about mindfulness and yoga and Tai Chi, and these are all very important, and we featured those kinds of programs for that reason. Now, there's a great deal that you hear about with a heart healthy diet, and a lot of research is done on diet for the heart, but it also is critical for the brain. The Rush Institute has research, very big study, have really demonstrated that their mind diet is probably the best. And we're going to have some blogs, and so we're going to be featuring what is on that mind diet and the kinds of foods that you want to eat. Incidentally, what you basically want to do is reduce the amount of red meat, unless it's ostrich. Now, ostrich is red meat. It's all right, but you don't want to eat what we call the ungulates, things with hooves. That doesn't work too well for the heart or the brain. And you want to focus on eating fish, especially the oily fish, and very colorful fruits and vegetables. In the longevity study, when they look at people living over 100 in these enclaves of called the blue zones around the world, where a lot of people live over 100, and they live very healthy over 100. They eat about a 90% of a plant-based diet. They don't eat a lot of animals. However, we do in America. We're kind of, in love with eating animals. We're quite carnivorous here. So here's what I would suggest. Aim for anything that swims or flies, and eat the bushes and the berries, okay? And kind of avoid those ungulates. That would be the way to do it. But you'll find out more in a future blog on that from Belmont. Now, this area here, Rush has done a lot of work on this area here, sense of purpose and feeling useful. This is also tied into the strong social network. This is an area that is been underestimated as important, is extremely important. Boy, during COVID, when seniors were so isolated, particularly living at home and isolated, their mental acuity really dropped rapidly. It was startling. In our programs, once we no longer had to do some of that isolation we had to do, we were able to restore some of the functioning, but it was startling how important it is. This is one of the reasons that I myself have I'm very biased toward groups and working with groups. Just working at home, you might be able to make it work, but it's much more difficult. You want to get connected to a social network of groups. It's also hard to get a sense of purpose unless you're connected to others. Now, if you look at all of these, every single one of these, you need to work on all of them for your whole brain fitness program. But if you were only to do one, if you only did one and you did none of the others, the most important is this one, exercise. Isn't that fascinating? Exercise, that's it. We have got to get out and, pump iron and, puff and puff with our daily walk. Walking is probably just as good as running. You don't have to do aerobic running. You can do walking, but aim for 45 minutes to an hour. And you want to walk at a very rapid pace. You want to kind of work up a sweat when you're out there. We have, Belmont actually was a pioneer in bringing in programs, bringing in a whole gym. We have a gym with physical therapists who work with residents. And we were a pioneer in that. Patricia Will was very, very interested in that, even before the research was particularly strong. But now it's just unequivocally strong. So that's a critical thing that you want to do. Now, in developing whole brain fitness, and we're going to get into some whole brain fitness exercises, there are two cardinal principles. It has to be something new to the brain. It must be new, and it must be a mental stretch. Now that sounds like it's easy. It's quite difficult to figure out how to do that. And we do a huge amount of training of staff to teach them how to take material that we've designed and developed and then present it to the particular group they're working with. And this is every one of the groups at Belmont, in every program, how to present it in a way that's new to the brain and a mental stretch. If it isn't that, it's not going to make it. It's not going to be a part of building cognitive reserve. It'll be pleasant. Now, we also have found through our own research, program research that we've done on our programs, as well as looking at the general research, that these are the areas that you have, the 6 domains in the mental workout that are critical. And one is what we call critical thinking. This one's extremely important. And this really does involve verbal skills. You really do need to work on verbal skills and verbally develop concepts and talk about concepts and think and debate and that sort of a thing. Here's another one that's very, very important is memory and body movement together, where you learn steps. And then here we are kind of illustrating with a caller who will call the step, and you have to remember what the step was and then practice it. But anything that uses 2 parts of your brain simultaneously, your memory and a body function. Actually, here, the best example of this one is square dancing, where you have to remember what the steps are, and then the caller calls them randomly, and then you've got to follow what the caller says. That's a very good exercise. Now, you want to learn something new. For one thing, it keeps your life interesting, but it's also stimulating parts of your brain. And this one, step-by-step sequencing, we're illustrating it here with crafts. A lot of Americans don't do crafts. Some cultures are very big on crafts, but a lot of Americans don't. In our programs, we incorporate crafts in a variety of ways that will give us step-by-step sequencing, like cooking or horticulture, and creating decorations for a party or something of the sort, because this is actually a very vital thing to do, the step-by-step sequencing. Long-term memory is really what you learn, well, what you should have learned in school if you've been paying attention, kind of a thing. So we get back to a lot of that. This is actually a lot of fun to go back in long-term memory and see what you can remember, what you can't. And then the other big challenge is analytic solutions, analytic. Now, one of the things that we have, that we incorporate, kind of embed, particularly in the critical thinking, the mind and memory, and the sequencing, is creative. These areas, we incorporate a lot of creative and spiritual pieces in that. And that's been very vital. Now I'm going to give you some simple mental workouts that are very, very quick, because what do I have? 1 minute to go, 2 minutes. We're coming down to the end of our minutes here, but I just want to give you a couple of ideas. And give your time yourself. And I usually start with the letter B. Write down all the animals that begin with the letter B in 1 minute. Actually, what I do as a mental workout is like when I'm taking a shower or something, I think I go through the whole alphabet. Now, some of the letters, I mean, when you get to Q and X and stuff, it's pretty hard to find some animals in there. There's a few of them, but I try to aim for getting at least 10 animals in 1 minute with the letter A, the letter B, the letter C, and so on. This is a very good exercise, kind of fun too. And then you want to do analytic things like this one. What's the one thing in common for artists, automobiles, and cooks? What's the one thing that's in common? These are analytic. This would come under the analytic piece. And the answer for this one is they all use oil. There's tons of these types of things in the internet. You can find these in the internet. Here's another one. What about water, baseball players, and pantyhose? What's the one thing in common? Water, baseball players, and pantyhose. The answer there is they all run. Those are kind of fun, but they're good exercises. Then learn new words. You should try to learn one new word a week, like some oddball words that you do see these, palimpsest. But what the heck does it mean? You find that, especially because now you're all going to be reading, of course, talking about what you read, and then you look up words that you don't know. I looked that one up. I saw that word 2 or 3 times. What the heck does that thing mean? It's an interesting word. I'll let you look that up, palimpsest, and see what you think. Then you want to use it in a sentence. And then you want to add to your vocabulary. Reader's Digest used to have some of those vocabulary quizzes and adding to your vocabulary. Add to your vocabulary. And then you just drop a palimpsest in your speech. And I mean, pretty soon you might not have quite as many friends as you thought you'd have, but in any event, because they won't know what the heck you're talking about. Now, we don't have time to do this, but I want to give you an example of practice organizing ideas. Make it really fast here for us. A rolling stone gathers no moss. What you want to do is look at proverbs. And there's just proverbs abound everywhere, especially in scriptures. The scripture is a very, very good place for them. And say, what does that mean for my life? Proverbs are talking about life. What does it mean? And this is a relatively easy one. What does a rolling stone? We've all heard that one. That's easy. But challenge yourself with some real oddball ones like mounted beggars race their steed. What on earth does that mean? And remember, in a proverb, every word matters. Notice that they're using the word beggar. This is an ironic proverb. They're using the word beggar, and the beggars are mounted. And the steed, by the way, in case, is a very old-fashioned word for horse. So beggars who are mounted on a horse are racing their horse. Why would it say a mounted beggar would race its horse? What does that mean for life, for your life? Okay. Challenge yourself in this way. This is critical thinking. And it's very interesting and fun. Another thing that's very good to do, observe a design such as this one for 11 seconds, very short, then stop looking at it and draw it. See if you can draw that. This one is excellent because it involves memory. It involves spatial and visual spatial kinds of an exercise, as well as you have to use your pen and pencil. So you're using several different areas of your brain, this type of thing. These would be just examples. Looking at what's the difference between flotsam and jetsam. You've heard these words, what the heck? Who is the only person to serve as both vice president and president of the US without being elected to the Electoral College? Who that would be Gerald Ford, that sort of a thing. Now, that in all of these, you can look at all of these kinds of exercises, and you can see they're really quite fun to do. There's really kind of a kick. Our group loves the Circle of Friends. It's very, very enjoyable for them. The day has to be fun, or they're not going to come. They're just simply not going to do it. But our whole philosophy is, I really like this Greek proverb here's another proverb. Because this proverb really says what is our philosophy of all the programming at Belmont actually is embedded kind of in this proverb. A society grows great when old men plant trees whose shade they know they shall never sit in. And this is a proverb that's talking about the fact that even though you're old, even though you've lost some memory, even though you've lost some physical functioning, you're still a person and a part of the world, an important part of the world. And you participate in the whole life force. You still have a purpose. So that is, my time is up, and that is the end of the presentation.
Beverly, thank you so much for the thorough journey of learning about the brain, some of the pitfalls that we fall into, and some of the things that we can do to improve our brain function. I wanted to let the audience know that we are going to be sending out a video link for everyone who registered. And I'm going to suggest that we put some of the solutions to those proverbs on there, because I know that I want to know. I want to follow up on those proverbs. I don't want those just sifting through my brain. But yeah, thank you so much, Beverly. We really appreciate, your time today. I hope that we can have you on again very soon. I also want to thank Adam, who is our Adam DeMcCauley, our Vice President of Memory Care and Programs, who did us the favor of answering many of the Q&A that came through the screen. So thank you, Adam, very well qualified to answer those questions. And then I wanted to add to that, in our line of work here, we see many professionals come through here, brilliant people, rocket scientists, literally, neurosurgeons, engineers. And so when you say, learning something new, that mental stretch, right? Because it doesn't matter how brilliant you are, it's doing that mental stretch that really helps build our cognitive reserve that we've seen. So everybody, stay tuned for those slides that will be coming your way via email. And looks like a couple of other questions did come through. Just people saying thank you so much. Someone wants to know if you would be willing to share your slides. We will get back to you on an individual basis on that. And then additionally, Susan Berger, who is our family advisor, she will be giving a brief presentation on our Belmont Village programs in memory care, as well as our assisted living and independent programs. So stay tuned for that. Beverly, any closing words before we turn over to Susan?
Well, I'm so happy to know that all of you who were on this webinar are interested in this topic, because it really does make a difference. You can have a very fulfilled life. It really, no matter, you don't have to be perfect. You don't have to age with utter perfection. You can have a very fulfilled life, but you do need to follow a protocol like this. So I'm really happy to, very happy to share that.
Thank you so much. There was one question that came in last minute that hasn't been answered on how cardiovascular issues affect, your brain. Would you be able to answer that for us really quickly, or should we get back to them individually?
I think that is, I need to know more of what cardiovascular issues you're talking about. I think we better do that one individually, because I think that's a little more complex.
Okay, so I will say to the caller to please email the email address on your invitation, a little bit more precise information, and we will pass it on to Beverly and to Adam too. Okay, well, thanks again. And I'm going to turn it over to my colleague and friend, Susan Berger, our family advisor, to share a little more information with us. Thanks, Susan.
Thank you. Beverly, it has been my honor to work with you for these so many years. I learn something new every day from you, and so do our residents. For 25 years, Belmont Village has owned and operated best-in-class, fully licensed senior living communities were founded on the belief that all seniors deserve to live happy, self-directed lives in a supportive community, one that's filled with new friendships and interests, safety and security, quality and value, and above all, a place that they can call home. As Beverly said, at Belmont, we recognize that lifestyle has a profound impact on one's brain health and well-being. What you eat and drink, how much you exercise, and the way you socialize are all critically important to that brain health. And just as our name suggests, our villages focus on bringing people together while providing them with a quality of life. And what we all know as a result of this pandemic is the importance of social connections. Our communities offer independent, assisted, and memory care support. And although our residents' needs may vary, everyone can count on our caring and compassionate staff, committed to providing high-quality, person-centered care. And our residents and their families have added peace of mind because they know that our Belmont Village nurses, those trained medical professionals, are on site 24 hours a day to serve the healthcare needs of each resident. I have received so many calls every day asking about Belmont's extraordinary memory care support. And for those, as Beverly said, that are experiencing cognitive impairment and early stage memory loss, Belmont provides a therapeutic whole brain fitness lifestyle. That's one that combines our exceptional wellness model with mental fitness. We recognize above all that memory care no longer has to be behind a closed door. And this innovative approach to memory care is called our Circle of Friends. And it has changed how providers and families now look at assisted living and memory care support. But the goal of all of our memory care programs, whether those are mild or more advanced stages, is to provide each resident with what we call the Just Right Challenge every day so they can feel successful and have that newfound sense of purpose. At Belmont, we strive to create a positive experience for all of our members. Those include our residents, our families, and our employees. And we continue to set new standards in resident and family satisfaction. We have also been recognized as a terrific place to work by our over 4,000 employees nationwide. And I'm proud to say that I'm one of those employees who've been with Belmont for the last 18 years. If you have any questions about Belmont Village near you, or you would like to learn more about our innovative approach to memory care, I hope that you will give me a call or send me a text or an email. Again, my name is Susan Berger, and I am a trusted family advisor. My phone number is 424-232-0704, and my email is sberger@belmontvillage.com. It is always my pleasure to assist families as they navigate the many options in senior living, either for themselves or for their loved one. Please take the time to compare and don't wait for a crisis to react. Thank you again, Beverly, and thank you all for joining us today. I look forward to seeing you at our next event.
Thank you, Susan, and thank you, everyone. We will have another event coming right up. Please stay tuned for that. But to access any of our past webinars, please go to our website at belmontvillage.com/webinars. You will find a library of lectures there to access Beverly's webinar, as well as many other experts that we've had to share their knowledge with you. If you are registered for the webinar, you will be receiving a follow-up link on how to access Beverly's webinar. So thank you, everyone. Thanks again, Beverly. Adam, Ann, thank you, Susan. Have a wonderful day and we'll see you next time.